The cruise industry quietly rewrote the rulebook, and most passengers are still playing by the old one. Not the rules they hand you in that color-coded welcome packet. Not the ones the travel agent walks you through over the phone. The real rules, the ones buried in terms of service updates, quietly rolled out between sailings, slipped into booking confirmations without fanfare. The ones that cost people hundreds of dollars in unexpected charges, stranded them in foreign ports, or turned a dream vacation into a logistical nightmare. I've been tracking these changes for the better part of 2 years now. I've talked to cruise staff, independent travel agents, disgruntled passengers who reached out after getting hit with surprise fees, and a few people who work in hospitality operations and asked not to be named. What I'm about to share isn't speculation. It's pattern recognition from a lot of documented frustration. And by the time you finish this, you'll board your next cruise, or book your first one, with a completely different level of awareness than the average passenger standing next to you on that gangway. Stick around for Rule 7 especially. That one has cost families thousands of dollars, and the fix takes about 4 minutes. The single biggest shift in the cruise industry over the last 2 years isn't about luggage limits or dress codes. It's about how automatic gratuities are now structured. And this is Rule 1 because it affects everything downstream. Most major lines, including Carnival, Royal Caribbean, Norwegian, and MSC, have raised their daily gratuity rates between 15 and 25% since 2022. That part gets reported. What doesn't get as much attention is the increasingly aggressive policy against removing or adjusting those gratuities at guest services. Historically, you could walk to the front desk, explain you preferred to tip individually in cash, and have the automatic charge removed. Many passengers who'd been cruising for years did exactly that. They tipped generously. They just wanted control over where the money went. That window is closing on most lines now. Several have moved to what they're calling non-removable gratuity policies, framing it as a service guarantee to their crew, which sounds reasonable until you're on a 7-night sailing where the service has genuinely been inconsistent and you have no recourse. Here's what actually works. Book a cruise line that still has a removable policy and confirm that in writing before you pay your deposit. Norwegian Cruise Line and some smaller luxury lines still allow adjustments if you request it on the final night of sailing. Ask specifically. Get the answer in writing via email. This one thing can save a family of 4, $100 to $200 depending on sail length, and it protects your right to reward excellent service the way you choose. The drink package has become one of the most confusing financial decisions in modern travel, and it's Rule 2 because the math has genuinely changed. The old logic was simple. If you drink more than 5 or 6 cocktails a day, the package pays for itself. That logic still works, but there are new variables that most package buyers don't account for. First, the price of the packages themselves has climbed significantly. What cost $55 per person per day in 2019 is now frequently $75 to $90 on major lines. That's before the automatic gratuity applied on top of the package price. Yes, you pay a gratuity on the drink package itself, which is separate from the daily crew gratuity. On a 7-night cruise for 2 people, that can add $300 or more to what you thought you were paying. Second, and this is the part that actually irritates me, the included brands have been quietly downgraded on several lines. Beverages that used to fall within the package now require an upgrade or a surcharge. If you've bought a package and then ordered something that gets rung up as a premium item, you've experienced this firsthand. The move that genuinely saves money. Price out your realistic daily consumption honestly, not optimistically. If you're a 2-drink-a-dinner person, skip the package. Buy individual drinks. The markup per drink is high, yes, but it won't exceed what you'd spend on a package you're not using. If you're a dedicated morning mimosa, afternoon cocktail, pre-dinner drink, wine with dinner, nightcap kind of traveler, the package still works for you. Just read what's included before you click purchase. Embarkation port selection is Rule 3, and it's one of the least discussed money levers in cruising. When you book a cruise, the departure city is often presented as a fixed variable. Your cruise leaves from Miami on this date, period. But repositioning sailings, Cruises that start in one port and end in a different one have multiplied significantly since the pandemic, and they create a genuine arbitrage opportunity. A repositioning cruise from Barcelona to Fort Lauderdale in the fall might cost 60% less per night than a standard Caribbean loop leaving from the same Florida port. The trade-off is you book one-way flights and you don't return to your starting point. For travelers with flexibility on both ends, this is a completely legitimate way to experience a luxury ship at budget line prices. Beyond repositioning, the port fees themselves vary significantly by departure city. Sailing out of Galveston, Texas versus Miami for a similar itinerary often runs $200 to $300 cheaper per cabin, not because the cruise is different, but because the port authority fees are lower, and the cruise lines compete harder in secondary markets. This doesn't apply to everyone, but if you're within reasonable driving or cheap flight distance of multiple embarkation options, compare total cost, including getting to the port before you assume the most obvious departure city is the best one. Specialty dining has undergone a transformation so complete that calling it optional is almost misleading at this point. And this is Rule 4. On ships launched or significantly refurbished in the last 3 years, the distribution of dining quality has shifted. Main dining rooms still exist and still serve 3-course meals every evening. But the gap between main dining and specialty restaurants has widened considerably on newer vessels. Norwegian and MSC in particular have designed ships where the specialty restaurants are, architecturally, experientially, and qualitatively, so far ahead of the complementary options that passengers who skip them often feel like they missed the ship's signature experience entirely. The new rule is this: if you're booking a newer megaship, build specialty dining into your budget before you board. Buying dining packages in advance, before you sail, runs consistently cheaper than booking on board. The savings range from 20 to 40% depending on the line and how far in advance you book. Watch for promotions in the 60 to 90-day window before sailing. Lines routinely offer free or discounted specialty dining packages during that period to fill advance bookings. What you don't want to do is arrive on board planning to pay as you go. Prices on board for a single specialty dinner for two can run $150 to $220 without wine. That was not the reality 4 years ago. Wi-Fi is Rule 5, and the headline that cruise lines use doesn't match the Einordnungsstake fine print, and I want to be specific about this. Several major lines now advertise Wi-Fi as included or as part of bundled packages. Starlink-powered connectivity is genuinely impressive on some ships. Speeds that weren't possible at sea even 2 years ago. That part is real. But the basic or social tier that sounds like it's included in certain promotions is limited, in ways that make it functionally unusable for anything beyond very light messaging. Video calls are blocked. Streaming is blocked. Many productivity platforms load painfully slowly or not at all. The full speed tier that most people actually need for working remotely or staying connected meaningfully is the premium package, and it costs real money, $30 to $40 per device per day on most lines. If you work remotely and are considering using a cruise as a working vacation, this matters enormously. Test the policy, buy the right tier before boarding at the advance purchase discount, and if your work requires reliable video calls, verify which ships have Starlink coverage versus legacy satellite systems before you book. Onboard credit is one of the most misunderstood perks in the cruise booking ecosystem, and Rule 6 is about what actually happens to it. When you book through a travel agent or through promotional booking windows, you often receive onboard credit, essentially store credit you can spend on the ship. Sounds straightforward. Use it on drinks, excursions, the spa. People leave money on the table constantly with this. Here's what most passengers don't know. Non-refundable onboard credit, which is the most common type issued through promotions, expires at the end of the sailing. It doesn't carry over. It doesn't get refunded. If you don't spend it, it's gone. Refundable onboard credit, which you might receive through a travel agent rebate or specific promotions, can be cashed out at guest services on the final night of your sailing. Many passengers never do this because they don't know the distinction or don't realize it's possible. The rule: know which type of OBC you have before boarding. Your booking confirmation will specify. If it's refundable, make a note to visit guest services the last evening and collect the balance. I've talked to passengers who left $150 behind simply because they didn't know this was an option. Shore excursions and the cruise line's new liability policy is Rule 7, and this is the one I promised you'd want to pay attention to. Until recently, one of the strongest arguments for booking excursions through the cruise line, even at a premium over independent operators, was the guarantee. If the excursion runs long and the ship departs, the cruise line is responsible for getting you to the next port to rejoin the ship. Several lines have modified this policy in ways that create significant ambiguity. The guarantee now frequently applies only to cruise line-operated excursions, which sounds obvious, but the categorization of which excursions count as cruise line-operated has become blurry. Third-party operators sold through the cruise line's own website are sometimes classified differently, and the guarantee may not apply the same way. The practical rule: if you're booking through the ship's official shore excursion desk or app, ask specifically in writing whether your specific excursion carries the full return guarantee. Do not assume. 2 families I heard from directly last year missed their ship in different ports, one in Mexico, one in the Mediterranean, and the resolution process was significantly more complicated than they'd been led to believe. Independent excursions can absolutely be the right choice, often a fraction of the cost, with more authentic experiences. But build in a hard buffer. If the ship departs at 5, be back at the port by 3. Not 3:50. 3. Travel insurance through the cruise line is Rule 8, and the short version is, it's usually not enough. Cruise line branded travel protection packages have expanded their marketing significantly. They're positioned as convenient, comprehensive, and competitively priced. For some situations, they're fine. But look at the cancel for any reason coverage carefully. Most cruise line policies that advertise this feature return your money as future cruise credit, not cash. If you cancel a trip because of a genuine emergency and receive credit that expires in 2 years for a cruise line you may never use again, that's not the protection you thought you bought. Third-party travel insurance policies that offer cancel for any reason coverage with cash reimbursement are consistently better for most travelers. They cost more. They're worth it. Compare using an aggregator site rather than purchasing whatever the booking screen offers you at checkout. The onboard casino is Rule 9, and this one is legitimately underused as a financial strategy by people who have no interest in gambling. Major cruise lines run casino promotions that offer free or deeply discounted cabin rates to players who meet certain onboard casino spend thresholds. If you're a moderate casino visitor anyway, someone who might spend a few $100s over 7 nights just for entertainment, the math sometimes flips entirely in your favor. Casino rates are often the deepest discounts available anywhere on a given ship. Players Club programs across Carnival Corporation's brands, Royal Caribbean, and others offer cabin credits, free cruises, and priority boarding based on play. None of this requires you to be a high roller. It requires you to understand how the system is structured and opt into it intentionally. If gambling isn't your thing, this rule doesn't apply. But if you're someone who enjoys a few hours at the blackjack table anyway, you're leaving a meaningful financial benefit on the table by not linking your play to a recognized player account. Loyalty programs are Rule 10. And the devaluation that's happened across the industry since 2022 needs to be named clearly. Royal Caribbean's Crown and Anchor program, Carnival's VIFP program, Norwegian's Latitudes program, all of them have modified the earning structure, the benefit tiers, or both in the last 2 years. The changes are generally framed as enhancements. They are not enhancements for most existing members. Points redemption values have dropped. Benefits that used to kick in at lower tiers have migrated to higher ones. And the promotional sailings that used to double or triple points accumulation have become rarer. The rule: don't chase loyalty status as a primary strategy. For savings, unless you are already a very frequent cruiser, meaning 4 or more sailings per year on the same line. For moderate cruisers, the flexibility of booking the best value across multiple lines will consistently outperform the incremental benefits of staying loyal to one brand chasing status. You'll reach in 3 years, when the program may have changed again. Dress codes are Rule 11, and while this sounds minor, it has genuinely affected people's onboard experience in ways they didn't expect. The pandemic relaxed enforcement significantly across all major lines. Many passengers adjusted their packing accordingly. In the last year, enforcement has quietly tightened again, particularly on formal nights and in main dining rooms on certain lines. Royal Caribbean and Cunard in particular have returned to stricter enforcement of their stated dress guidelines in certain dining venues. Passengers showing up to the main dining room in shorts and flip-flops on formal night are being redirected to buffet venues or casual alternatives. Which is fine if that's your preference, but frustrating if you plan to be at a specific dinner reservation. The rule is simple and takes 30 seconds. Read the dress code for the specific ship and line your sailing before you pack. Not the generic smart casual marketing description. The actual stated policy. It's on their website. It hasn't disappeared, even if enforcement felt lax for a while. Rule 12 is the one that has stranded real passengers in real ports, and I want to walk through it carefully because it's become more common as cruise lines have tightened their departure procedures. All aboard times are enforced. That's not new. What is new, or newer, is the precision and inflexibility of how they're being enforced on high-traffic itineraries, particularly on Caribbean loops where ships are moving through multiple ports per day, and any delay creates a cascading schedule problem. There are documented, verified cases in the last 18 months of ships departing with minutes to spare before announced all-aboard times, leaving passengers on the dock in Cozumel, Nassau, and Dubrovnik. These are not people who showed up hours late. In several cases, passengers were delayed returning from port due to traffic, a delayed tender, or a shore excursion that ran slightly long. The rule that protects you is a buffer and a communication protocol. Know the all-aboard time. Set your phone alarm for 60 minutes before it. If you're on an independent excursion and running even slightly behind, call the ship's emergency shore contact number. Every major line provides this, and let them know. Ships that are aware a passenger is en route will occasionally hold briefly. Ships that don't know you exist will not. Keep that number saved in your phone before you step off the ship. That's it. 4 minutes of preparation before every port day. Here's where this all lands. Cruising is still one of the best value propositions in travel when you approach it strategically. You get accommodation, food, entertainment, and transportation between destinations in a single booking. That fundamental value hasn't gone away. What has changed is the layer of policy complexity underneath that value. The rules that used to be simple have forks in them now. The guarantees that felt solid have asterisks. The packages that seemed like deals have conditions. You now know 12 of those conditions that the average cruiser discovers only after they've already been affected. That's not a small thing. That's the difference between a vacation that lands the way you imagined it, and one that requires 2 weeks of dispute emails and credit card claims when you get home. If at least 3 of these change something about how you'll book or board your next cruise, share this with someone who has a sailing coming up. Not for the algorithm, because they genuinely might not know, and knowing costs nothing. Drop a comment with which rule caught you most off guard. I read all of them, and your experience on specific ships or lines helps shape exactly what I cover next. There's a follow-up coming on cruise line contract changes that will make this one feel like a warm-up.